G'day folks, and welcome to our very first episode of Bushbeat, a brand new show here on rugbyleague.com, showcasing country rugby league in New South Wales, Queensland and the ACT. I'm your host, Jason Costigan, and in this episode we'll be talking local rugby league in a stack of places from Cooma to Cairns and Yanco to Yarrabah. Yes, we'll be covering more ground than Burke and Wills. We'll also learn about one of the clubs that plays in Canberra's George Took Shield. All that and more coming up inside the next hour or so right here on rugbyleague.com. For now, though, a quick break. When we come back, we'll check out what's happening in New South Wales and the ACT. Stay with us. You're listening to Bushbeat on rugbyleague.com. Welcome back to Bushbeat here on rugbyleague.com. Jason Costigan's my name. Great to have your company, and it's time for us now to shine a light on country New South Wales. First up, let's look at rugby league in the biggest regional centre in the state, and specifically the Denton Cup under the control of the Newcastle Rugby League. No footy there last weekend because it was effectively washed out. The field's just way too wet in the Hunter. And as mentioned in our news some weeks ago, in keeping with tradition, some big names going around in Newcastle this season. Those names include Matt Ikavalu with Wyong, actually caught up with Matt in the south of France last season. Other notables in Newcastle this year include Kevin Naigama, who's with Western Suburbs, Albert Kelly with Cessnock, Mitch Garbutt with Curry, and the Matautia boys Peter and Sione, who are with Lakes United. And as for the premiership table, right now, Western Suburbs, Cessnock and the defending premiers Maitland leading the way on 6 points. Then Souths, Lakes United and Curry, those teams on 4. They're followed by Wyong and the Entrants on 2. And down the bottom on 0, in this order, we have Central, who made the grand final last season, first time actually in 60-odd years. Then Macquarie, and in the basement, Northern Hawks. This coming weekend, round 5 in the Denton Cup on Saturday from 3 o'clock, Maitland at Cessnock and Macquarie at home to Lakes United. And then from 6 p.m, the Butcher Boys hosting Curry. And on Sunday, the Battle of the Central Coast, Wyong at the Entrance, as Souths welcome the Hawks. Again, the kick-off times 3 p.m. Now we go right up the New South Wales coast to the Northern Rivers, where they've had a 2-week break coming into this weekend. And for the record, 14 teams contesting first grade there this season. That makes it bigger than Super League. And as for the table, Balambal and Coogin leading the way on 6 points. Then 4 teams on 4 points. Mullumbimby, Evans Head, Kyogle and Tweed Coast. They're followed by 4 teams on 2 points. Ballina, Maris Brothers, Murwillumbah and Lower Clarence. And then on 0, in this order, Tweed Heads, Casino, Northern United and Byron Bay. The footy in the Northern Rivers returns on Sunday. We have Northern United versus cellar-dwelling Byron Bay at Lismore's Crozier Field. Over on the coast at Ballina, the Seagulls welcome the undefeated Coogin Hornets. At Mullumbimby, the Giants entertain the Kyogle Turkeys. At Piggabeen, it's Tweed Coast Raiders versus Maris Brothers and Tweed Seagulls v Casino Cougars. At Yamba, Lower Clarence will be looking to shoot down the visiting Evans Head Bombers. And last but not least, Murwillumbah Mustangs, who play in a beautiful part of the world in the Upper Tweed. They host the undefeated Balambal Jets at the Colts Junior League Complex. In Group 2, Woolgoolga defeated the visiting Comets last weekend 20 points to 10. Sawtell cleaned up at Maxwell 46-14. And on the road, Nambucca Heads beat the Grafton Ghosts 24 points to 10. To the ladder, and Sawtell and Nambucca on 4, the Seahorses and South Grafton Rebels on 3, Maxwell 2, and on 0, Coffs Harbour and the Ghosts. This weekend, on Saturday, a massive local derby in Grafton in the Jacaranda City as the Rebels host the Ghosts, and on Sunday, Sawtell off to Nambucca as Woolgoolga welcome Maxwell. All games start at 2:40 p.m. To Group 4, and last weekend Boggabri won 44-24 in Cowboy Country at Dungowan. North Tamworth flogged Katingal 50 points to 0 at Jack Wollaston Oval. Werris Creek Magpies 62-0 over visiting Wee Waa. And at Kitchener Park, Gunnedah beat the Moree Boars 28 points to 14. After 2 rounds, 4 teams undefeated. That's Boggabri, Norths, Gunnedah and Werris Creek. They're all on 4 points. And then 4 teams on 0. Moree, Dungowan, Cootie and Wee Waa. To the Central Coast now, and last weekend we saw Erina Eagles give it to visiting Berkeley Vale 52 points to 6. Elsewhere at Moree Breen Oval, Wyong beat Arimba 22-16, and at Woy Woy, Toukley defeated the Roosters 18-10. And as for the table, the Eagles flying high. Early days, of course, they're on 6 points, followed by 4 teams on 4 points. Kincumber, the Entrants, Wyong and Toukley. And then on 2 points, Arimba, Berkeley Vale and Terrigal, and winless is Woy Woy. For round 5 this Sunday from 1:25pm, the entrance versus Wyong, that's a blockbuster. And then from 3:05pm, Berkeley Vale versus Arimba, Terrigal v Toukley, and what should be a cracker, Kincumber, the Colts with all their big names, the likes of Matt Moylan and Fafita and co. They host the Eagles. That's one game worth going to this weekend on the Central Coast. In the Illawarra, the spiritual home of our great friend and colleague Steve Mascord, they had round 2 last weekend in the Harrigan Cup. Collies 68-0 over Corrimal Cougars. De La Salle won 36-16 at Dapto, and Western Suburbs 30 defeated Thirroul 10. The latter, Collies and De La Salle on 4 points, followed by West and Dapto on 2, and Thirroul and Corrimal both chasing their first win of the season. This Saturday, Collies head north to Captain Cook Oval to play De La Salle. The Butchers host the Canaries, and the Cougars welcome the Devils. All those games in the Illawarra starting at 3pm. To the Macarthur Rugby League, formerly Group 6, which covers the area from Campbelltown down to the Southern Highlands. Last weekend, defending premiers Camden won 36-28 against Collegians at Bradbury. Southwest Goannas edged out Narellan Jets 36-34 at Onslow Oval. And since then, we've seen the Jets talking up the presence of T-Rex, Tony Williams. In the other round 4 fixtures, the Oaks cooked the Chooks 42-12 in the steam town of Thirlmere. Picton beat Mittagong 34-18 at Victoria Park. And Campbelltown City, too good for East Campbelltown. The Kangaroos beating the Eagles 28-14 at Waminda. And as for the standings, Michael Speechley's Rams 4 from 4 so far, as the only undefeated team on 8 points, followed by the Magpies, Oakdale Workers and the Goannas on 6. Then 5 teams on 4 points, the Oaks, Collies, Thirlmere, Kangaroos and Mittagong, and East Campbelltown on 2 points, and T-Rex and the Jets seemingly grounded. Perhaps they're stuck in the hangar. They are yet to open their account. For this coming weekend on Saturday, just the one game from 6:30pm. On Saturday, that is, under the lights at the Oaks, and it's the Tigers versus the Roos. And then on Sunday afternoon, Camden v Picton, Mittagong versus the Goannas. Billy Hayward's boys from East Campbelltown play at Narellan. And coming off the bye, the Oakdale Workers host Thirlmere. All those games to start at 3 o'clock. To Group 7 on the South Coast, they had round 4 last weekend. On Saturday at Michael Cronin Oval, Gerringong Lions beat Milton Ulladulla 16-12. And in the Sunday fixtures, Stingrays on the road put the barb through Nowra Bomaderry Jets, flogging them 42-0 as Shellharbour won 32-24 against Albion Park Oak Flats at Ron Costello Oval. For the Eagles, try scorers included young Hudson Bailey, the son of former Dragons and Gold Coast prop Luke Bailey, the man they call Bull. Do you remember him? I certainly do. I had the privilege of calling him many years ago on Fox and Sky New Zealand, playing for either club or country. In fact, I called his first game in the green and gold. I wonder if the young fella is a chip off the old block. And as for the game scheduled for Berry Showgrounds between the Magpies and Kiama, it was called off because the field was just too wet. It's been postponed until the 12th of July. And as for the table, the Stingrays and Shellharbour first and second respectively on 6, then 5 teams on 4 points. Kiama, Jamberoo, Gerringong, Albion Park Oak Flats and Milton Ulladulla, Nowra Bomaderry second last on 2 points, and in the basement, the Berry Magpies on 0. And this Saturday, the Black and Whites looking for that breakthrough victory when they welcome the Superoos. And at the same time, at Centenary Field, Albion Park Oak Flats play Gerringong. On Sunday in Group 7, Kiama make the trip south to take on Milton Ulladulla. And at Flinders Field, a top-of-the-table clash between Stingrays and Shellharbour. All matches to start at 3 o'clock. Heading further down the coast into Group 16, where the Better Electrical Premiership had its second round last weekend at Tathra, the Sea Eagles plucked the Chooks. Tathra 32-0 over Bega, whilst in the other Saturday fixture at the Dog Pound, Merimbula Pambula crushed a hapless Maruya 64 points to 2. In the Sunday games, playing at home, Narooma 14-0 winners over Bombala, whilst at Bateman's Bay in the Battle of the Tigers, Eden beat the Bay 60 points to 16. And the table, the Bulldogs, Eden, Eagles and Stallions all on 4 points, then Narooma and Bateman's Bay on 2, and then Bombala, Maruya and Bega on 0. And coming up this weekend in round 3, on Saturday we have Bega hosting Narooma, as the Bay Tigers visit Maruya to play the Sharkies. And then on Sunday at 3 o'clock, Cooma is back at home to face Merimbula Pambula as Eden welcome Tathra. In the Riverina, in Group 9, the Great Northern Premiership continues. Last weekend it was rivalry round and all the home teams got the chocolates, bar the Junee Diesels, with 4 of the 5 games giving us lopsided results. At GeoHex Stadium in Wagga, in a big local derby, Kangaroos 36, South City 12. Down on the border, Albury, the Thunder, big winners over Brothers, 60 points to 6. In the match of the round at Twickenham, Tumut 24 defeated neighbouring Gundagai 18. At Alfred Oval, Riley Butcher made his first grade debut for the defending premiers Young, as the Cherry Pickers walloped Cootamundra 40 points to 6. And at Laurie Daly Oval in the historic railway town of Junee, Temora wiped out the Diesels 40 points to 0 to enable the visitors to come away with the Challenge Cup. And we'll have more on the Cup very shortly. For the Dragons and that easy victory against the Diesels, Hayden Lomax and Billy Reardon scored 2 tries apiece. In case you're wondering, Lomax is the brother of New South Wales Kangaroos and now Parramatta player Zach Lomax, and Reardon the son of Steve, who played first grade with the Bulldogs during the 1990s and early 2000s. In fact, he was in Steve Folkes' grand final team back in 1998, the year before yours truly came to Belmore as the club's media manager. Now, the Group 9 table reads this way. The Pickers on top on 6, second on 4 and against last year's runners-up, the Glamour Boys Kangaroos, also on 6, followed by Tumut on 5, Temora 4, Albury Thunder 3, Gundagai 2, Junee 2, South City 2, and Cootamundra and Brothers on 0. Round 4 coming up, and it starts on Saturday. We have Roos versus Junee at the GeoHex Stadium in Wagga. And also on Saturday in their comeback season to first grade in Group 9, Cootamundra versus Albury at Les Boyd Oval. And then on Sunday in the Tucker Box town at Gundagai's Anzac Park, the Tigers tackle the young Cherry Pickers. Back in Wagga, South City versus Tumut at Harris Park. And at Nixon Park, Josh McCrone's Temora Dragons welcome Brothers, with Brothers getting a staggering 47.5 points start for the Challenge Cup, which means Temora need to win by 48 or more to hang on to the silverware. That's a big number, isn't it? Unbelievable. And by the way, all those games start at 2:35 p.m. Staying in the Riverina in neighbouring Group 20 in Round 3 of the Great Northern Premiership, Hay Magpies 50 points to 10 winners last week over the visiting TLU Sharks. And at Ron Crow Oval, where I was early this year broadcasting the famous West Wyalong knockout, Griffith Waratah Tigers embarrassed the Mallee men 66 points to 14. At Griffith Solar Mad Stadium, Yanko Wamoon 44, thrashed Black and Whites 14. And at Yenda, the Blue Heelers scraped home 30 points to 28 over the Roosters from Darlington Point Colliamberley. And as for the table, Waratah Tigers 6, Leeton Greenies 4, Hay Magpies 4, Yanko Wamoon 4. And after them, on 2 points in this order, DPC, Yenda, Black and Whites, TLU Sharks and West Wyalong. This coming Sunday in Group 20, the Mallee men at Darlington Point. Back at the X's, the only undefeated teams go head-to-head, with Waratah Tigers hosting the Greenies, who are coming off the bye. Hay has another home fixture, this time against the Blue Heelers. And at Lake Cajalago, TLU Sharks host Black and Whites. In Group 21, as Bushbeat continues on rugbyleague.com, in the Hunter Valley, last weekend, Denman 14 defeated Aberdeen 10, Singleton 24 defeated Scone 10, and this weekend, in Round 3 on Saturday, Muswellbrook hosts Singleton from 5:30, and then on Sunday at 2 o'clock, it's Denman versus Scone, as the Colts welcome the Tigers to the ladder. Well, more donuts than Krispy Kreme. Hopefully someone at the league will sort that out in the coming days, and we can talk about that next week on the show. To the Central West and the Peter McDonald Premiership, the PMP as they call it locally, last weekend in Round 2, Nyngan 42 defeated visiting Lithgow Workies 12, Dubbo Sims 62, Bathurst Panthers 6, Mudgee 28, Dubbo Macquarie 14, Bathurst St Pat's 26, Parks 30, Forbes 38, Orange Sims 18, Orange Hawks 20, Wellington 26. Now the ladder reads this way: Dubbo Sims, Wellington and Forbes on 4, St Pat's, Mudgee, Nyngan, Hawks, Orange Sims and the Spacemen, all of those teams on 2 points, Dubbo, Macquarie, Workies and Bathurst Panthers on 0. This Sunday, Panthers at Mudgee, Nyngan at Parks, Dubbo Sims play the Cowboys at Wellington, Workies host St Pat's, Orange Sims play Orange Hawks at Wade Park, all those games from 2 o'clock. And from 2:30, the match that's being played in Dubbo at Victoria Park, it's Macquarie versus Forbes. In the Woodbridge Cup last weekend, Grenfell Goannas 12, Carra Magpies 44, Oberon Tigers 36, Orange United Warriors 22, Trundle Boomers 36, Canowindra Tigers 34, Cargo Blue Heelers 16, Molong Bulls 39, Blaney Bears 8, Condobolin Rams 66, Peak Hill Roosters 14, Manildra Rhinos 24. And the ladder, the Rhinos and Magpies on top on 8, Orange United, Eugowra, Oberon and Molong on 6, Canowindra and Trundle on 4, Peak Hill, Condo, Cargo and Grenfell on 2, and on 0, the Blaney Bears. This Saturday, Grenfell at Manildra, kick-off is 3 o'clock, and on Sunday from 2 p.m, Molong versus Blaney, Eugowra at Condo, Carra welcome Cargo, and the Tigers at Canowindra. Now to the ACT and the Canberra Raiders Cup. Last weekend, Belconnen United came away from Greenway Oval with a skinny win over Tuggeranong. 30 points to 28, the Sharkies over the Bushrangers. Elsewhere, two-time defending champions, the Queanbeyan Kangaroos. 44-12 winners over visiting Woden Valley. Gungahlin 46-36 winners at Yass. And at Seaford, West Belconnen upstage Queanbeyan Blues 24 points to 10. The competition ladder reads this way. West Belconnen on top on 7. Next we have two teams on 6. That's the Blues and Belconnen United. Next is Roos and Gungahlin on 4, Woden Valley, the Rams on 3, Goulburn on 2, and the Bushrangers and the Magpies, second last and last respectively, both on 0. And finally, we come to Canberra's George Took Shield, which for those not familiar is effectively the second division in Canberra and surrounding areas such as the Southern Tablelands and the iconic Snowy Mountains. Last weekend, Harden Hawks had a big win in Canberra. They belted UC Stars 62-blot. As defending premiers Bungendore smashed Googong Goannas 62-10 in Tiger Town. At Crookwell, the Bynalong Brahmins beat the Green Devils 22-16, whilst back in the national capital, the Snowy River Bears edged out North Canberra 28-26, keeping in mind the Bears have dropped back to GTS after lifting the Premiership trophy last season in Group 16. So after 2 rounds, the ladder, it reads this way. Harden and Bungendore first and second on 4 points each, followed by 4 teams on 2 points. Burrawa, North Canberra, Snowy River Bears and Bynalong, and then 3 teams on 0. Crookwell, the Goannas and the Stars in that order. Looking ahead, the action continues this coming Saturday. That includes a big day at McLean Oval where Harden Hawks welcome North Canberra, and we'll discuss that and a whole lot more very shortly in our feature interview with the host club president. In other matches this weekend, Bungendore is at Bynalong and Googong hosts Burrawa. For the Goannas, it's also doubling up as their season launch. The other match is at Jindabyne where the Snowy River Bears welcome the Stars. And for the record, they have staggered kick-off times in the George Took Shield, or the GTS as we say, at Bynalong 2:15, Googong 2:30, Jindabyne 2:45 and Harden at 3 o'clock. And I'll tell you what, after getting through all that, I reckon I need a drink, at least a strong cup of coffee. So I might put the billy on and take a break here on rugbyleague.com. And when we come back, we'll shine a light on the George Took Shield, or as they call it locally, as I say, the GTS, and more specifically, the Harden Hawks. That's next here on Bushbeat on rugbyleague.com. Welcome back. This is Jason Costigan here on rugbyleague.com. We're talking country rugby league, and my guest now is Jason Pollard, the president of the Harden Hawks, who play in the George Took Shield based around Canberra and some of the satellite towns around the national capital in that part of the world. Jason, welcome to the program. Firstly, Harden Hawks. Tell us about the Harden Hawks, a club steeped in history going back more than a century.
The Hawks were involved in Group 9 for a lot of years. Mark up, now in the George Took Shield. Very successful club in their day, and continue to put sides on the paddock. I guess is the main thing from Harden's point of view in the community.
Now, you mentioned Group 9, of course, headquartered in Wagga Wagga, in a competition that's pretty famous with clubs like Cootamundra and Wagga Kangaroos, Junie Diesels, Temora Dragons, Young Cherry Pickers. Your club used to be part of that, but obviously times are changing and country towns not quite like they used to be, and you had to make that decision years ago to get out of Group 9.
Yeah, we made that decision years ago, and we've settled into the George Took competition nicely, and we always get asked the question about going back to Group 9, and it's never, from a club's point of view, it's never a no, but it's it's at the right time. And I guess biggest thing with Harden at the moment is jobs in the town and keeping young people in the town from moving away. That's where we lose a lot of players, and we just don't have the local players in the actual town to put to a first and a reserve grade side on the paddock at the moment. And one day it may be nice to go back. I don't know. We're pretty happy where we are at the moment, sitting in the George Took competition. So but as I said, we won't say no.
I'll come to George Took in a minute, but for the trivia buffs, Harden actually the birthplace of Group 9.
Yeah, Harden. I think it all kicked off at the Grand Hotel. A long time ago. They first met at the Grand and discussed the concept of the Group 9 competition.
Now tell us about the George Took Shield, because you play against teams from the ACT, from the suburbs of Canberra, but also those satellite towns, as I mentioned a moment ago, places like Bungendore and Crookwell and so forth. It's a good little competition with plenty of tribalism.
Yeah, the rivalries are pretty fierce between some clubs, Harden, Burrabine along the North Canberra Bears. But I think just this year we're welcoming a couple of new clubs as well. The Googong Goannas and the Jindabyne have come into the competition this year as well, so there's a bit of travelling there. But it should be good. We look forward to it, and the communities behind them little towns that come into the competition.
Now, you mentioned the North Canberra Bears, the Bears. You played them this weekend at McLean Oval. Plenty of rivalry there, a little bit of history between the two clubs.
Yeah, there's a fair bit of history between the two clubs. It's always a tight match. It doesn't matter where we're coming on the ladder, but we've played in grand finals against each other, and some very close games. And the Bears knocked us off one day here at home in a grand final with a field goal, and it was a bit of a disappointing day for us, but a good day for Canberra Bears.
I reckon it's going to be a good day for some of your old boys, because plenty of, I don't want to say has-beens, but club legends and larrikins, they'll all be coming along, or at least a lot of them, this coming weekend for your old boys' day.
Yeah, Barry Edwards, one of the old boys, and a very good player for the Hawks back in his day. Led the Hawks charge to a couple of grand finals. Unlucky not to win one or two of those, but Barry's got and started a group up on Messenger, and it's called the Flightless Hawks, and I think they plan to have a drink at the country club and then come on down to the football to watch both games. And it should be a good day to have a few old boys back here and watch the football in town.
Sounds great. We're speaking with Jason Pollard, the president of the Harden Hawks, who play in the George Took Shield in southern New South Wales. Jason, I've got to ask you about the community support for the Harden Hawks. The country club, obviously they're a key figure in your operation, naming rights sponsor, and therefore a significant contributor to the club. You must rely so much on that community support.
Yeah, we do. We wouldn't have a side if it wasn't for the community of Harden. We get so much support from our sponsors, as you said, Harden Country Club and the Bendigo Bank are always great to us, and just Greymont the Mine. There's so many other Zooms of the butchery. It's just everyone wants to chip in and do their little bit, whether it be player sponsors or major sponsors, and the clubs don't run without that good support.
Now, I'm looking across McLean Oval right now, and you're a little bit embarrassed because I've seen it in unbelievable condition. Looks like it needs a bit of water. What's going on there?
Hopefully, the ground's probably not in as good as Nick it has been in previous years. Hopefully the Hilltop Shire are onto that, and the ground will get fixed up eventually by the end of the season, and look a bit better than it has.
Well, I don't want to complain too much, because just to your right, that pavilion, that clubhouse, that grandstand, whatever you call it, it's an excellent facility. I've been to a lot of country rugby league venues across New South Wales and Queensland. It's something that would be the envy of many other clubs. Just tell us about how that's come about and what it means to have a facility like that for the players and also your sponsors and spectators.
Yeah, mate, we do have a marvellous facility here, and clubs would be envious of us having a facility like this, and it means so much to the club. People come over and have a beer and grab something from the canteen and have a drink and whatnot, and it just makes a difference to the club all around, and the support that we get over here, cheering the boys on and girls, makes a huge difference to the team.
We're talking to the boss of the Harden Hawks. His name's Jason Pollard. I'm Jason Costigan. We'll take a break here on rugbyleague.com, and we'll have more right after this. Welcome back to rugbyleague.com. My name's Jason Costigan. We're talking country rugby league on the show, and with me right now, Jason Pollard, the president of the Harden Hawks, who play in the George Took Shield. And Jason, your captain coach, or at least your coach this year, Nick Hall, he's well known in local rugby league circles, particularly more recent times with the young cherry pickers. What has he brought to the club, and how are things shaping up this year? You started with a win against Bynalong.
Yeah, mate, Hawley's a great bloke, and not only the coaching side of it, he just puts in so much effort and time to the club. He's a joy to have around the club, and he's a good man with the blokes coaching wise. They seem to get a laugh out of him, but also treat him with a lot of respect. And he's got a good bunch of players together this season. And we started round one against Bynalong with a terrific win, and we look forward to our clash coming up against the Canberra Bears in this weekend. Should be a terrific game.
Now, from Nick's family point of view, rugby league through their veins, isn't it? Because his brother Glenn, of course, former NRL player, and I dare say plenty of sibling rivalry there. But he's one player that did a lot of great work in Group 9, Nick, and I dare say his rugby league coaching and his rugby league pedigree is first class for country rugby league.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, Nick's a good coach, and I only got to see what he's done with the boys in the first 2 seasons he's been here. Beaten in the grand final last year, and we hope to, ultimate aim this year is to go one better with a bit of luck.
Well, what happened last year? You got to the big dance and you played Bungendore. Was it just a case of on the day they were just too good, the Tigers?
Yeah, definitely. Bungendore were too good for us on the day. We were no excuses, but we were walking wounded. We lost our whole front row in the semi-final. Our 2 front rowers and hooker were injured, and just made things difficult for us. Nick stepped up and played himself in the grand final at the age of 49, and certainly didn't let us down either. But Bungendore were just a good side and too good on the day.
Now, hang on. You're telling me that your coach last year was pushing 50 and played in the premiership decider?
Yeah, Nick wasn't left with much choice. He was the next man to step up, and he'd played a few games throughout the season to qualify, and he was there to help the boys out, and he wouldn't have had it any other way. And he done his best to get us over the line.
Now, fast forward to this season, and some news recently that's come to the fore, and that's his health situation with your coach, with Nick Hall. He's now battling cancer. In fact, starting radiation treatment in the coming days. A shocking ordeal. Just even think about this and to read about this. How's that impacting on you as president and the club, and of course your coach and his family?
Yeah, mate, we heard the news about Hawley. He's certainly been in contact with us and talking. We're 100% behind Hawley. He's got to have radiation, but he doesn't. He's the sort of bloke doesn't want a big deal made of it, and we're behind him, and we've got blokes put in place to help if he needs a little bit of time out while he's recovering. But Nick loves his football, and Nick won't be too far away from us. So
he's a real trooper.
Yeah, he certainly is. Yep, always sees the positive side of everything, Nick, and I'm sure things will work out fine.
Now, the roster that he's assembled this year, given the resources that you've got, is it fair to say you've got a team that will be more than competitive when you look back at your first up performance against Bynalong and what lays ahead? Do you think you will be in this up to your eyeballs?
Oh, yeah, look, certainly the roster we got, I think we'd be disappointed if we don't finish in the top couple of sides. Things have started well, and we hope to keep improving, and we've still got a few players that come back that haven't even sort of got the training yet, so hopefully we see them in the coming weeks, and we put a real strong side on the paddock.
Now, on rugbyleague.com, one of the teams we report on each week is the LB Tigers in the south of France, and Harden Hawks has a connection to LB Tigers through local boy Ben Shea. Now, the French season coming to a conclusion, as you know, and if things had been the way you wanted to be, he'd be coming back to Harden, but unfortunately not the case with Ben Shea, coming back from LB, back to Australia, but not back to Harden.
Yeah, no, unfortunately, Benny, a good bloke. He's signed up with Junee. I think a joint captain coach maybe, but we wish Benny all the best over in Junee for the Group 9 season, and we'd love to have him come back here and finish his career at some stage, of course.
And a great name too. We shouldn't just brush over this. The Shea name synonymous with rugby league here in Harden and neighbouring Murrumburra.
Yeah, John, Ben's father, coached the Harden Hawks, I think, in 1981 to a premiership, and John was 4-time Wiesel medalist and a club legend, and I think known in Group 9 for how good he actually was.
Now, you mentioned the Wiesel medal. That's basically the Dally M of Group 9. So to win it 4 times, that says it all.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, not many blokes can say they've won 4 Wiesel medals.
And what about the son? A bit of a chip off the old block?
Yeah, Benny's pretty tough and uncompromising, I think. He plays in a bit different position to his dad. I think his dad was a 5'8" centre, but Ben's a front row, second row lock, I'd say. So, but I guess he's got some traits of his dad for sure.
Do you think a few people around here and places like Junee are following what he's doing over in France?
Oh, yeah, definitely. They'd be keeping an eye on it, no doubt. People in Harden do, and I'd imagine Juno would be keeping an eye on how things are going over there as well.
Now, looking ahead, who do you think are the teams to beat this season? Obviously, the premiership being defended by Bungendore. I'm sure they're not alone in terms of being heavyweights in this competition.
Look, I think Bungendore probably the side to beat. Hard to know this early in the competition, but I definitely think Bungendore will put a strong side on the paddock, and I think Crookwell might also be a dark horse. Yeah, that they seem to be there every year, and Bynalong obviously a pretty handy side as well.
Now, you mentioned about Jindabyne and new teams coming into the competition. For those people not familiar with this part of the world, Jindabyne up in the high country, up in the snowy mountains. In fact, I had the pleasure of being up there a couple of months ago, climbing Mount Kosciuszko. That's a long way from Harden.
It is a long way from Harden, mate. It'll be a decent bus trip out there and back on the day, I'd say.
How does that all work? Is that something that is difficult for the players with their work commitments, their family commitments? Let's not forget these players. They're not. This is not the NRL. They're not on megabucks, are they?
No, that's right, mate. It is a long way to go. I guess we've sort of penciled it in for that weekend, and everyone knows we're going to Jindabyne on that weekend. So hopefully we'll take a full squad up there and have a crack.
All right, just summing up this weekend, for the old boys that are coming out to Maclean Oval, what can they expect for this game coming up against North Canberra this weekend?
I'd say it'll be a fierce battle, and hopefully the Hawks will come out on top at the end of the day.
And just summing up, what's your prediction? If you could look at the crystal ball, according to Jason Pollard, the president of Harden Hawks, can you see your club lifting that premiership trophy? You've done it before. I'm sure you think you can do it again.
Oh, of course, that's it. That's our ultimate aim, but that's everyone's aim at the end of the day, and hopefully we can do that.
Well, we wish you well, and look, thanks for your hospitality, and great to be back in Harden.
Thank you. We look forward to seeing you again at some stage throughout the season.
There he is, Jason Pollard, the president of the mighty Harden Hawks, who play in the George Took Shield, which is effectively the Canberra Second Division, talking country rugby league with yours truly, Jason Costigan, here on rugbyleague.com. Stay with us, more to come right after this. Welcome back to Bushbeat here on rugbyleague.com. Time now to have a look at what's happening in my home state of Queensland. Let's start by talking about the North's famous Foley Shield, which began way back in 1948. Now, back in the 1980s, as a kid growing up in the North, I absolutely adored the Foley Shield. In fact, one of my fondest memories was watching a very young Dale Shearer help my hometown of Mackay win the Foley Shield final for the first time in 25 years, and that was the year before Shearer went off to Manly. And only recently here on rugbyleague.com, I was listening to one of my heroes, the great Gene Miles, speaking to our good friend and colleague Andy Raymond about his memories of the Foley Shield, growing up in Townsville, especially facing the might of Mount Isa, led by the legendary Daisy brothers, Vern and Frank. Fast forward 4.5 decades, and last weekend, which was also the Labor Day long weekend in the Sunshine State, they had the Foley Shield in Townsville, with 6 games played over 3 days across both men's and women's competitions. 6 games over 3 days in men's and women's comps. I have to ask the question, whatever happened to player welfare? Now, to me and many others of my generation, last weekend was nothing but a cheap and nasty version of the Foley Shield, and a bit of an insult to those men who played when the Foley Shield was a real competition, a very tough competition, involving not just Cairns, Townsville and Mackay, but also teams such as Herbert River, Mount Isa, Whitsunday, Burdekin, Innisfail. They all used to play in their own right in the Foley Shield. That was the case when I was growing up. And yes, times have changed with the arrival of the Cowboys, wall-to-wall TV coverage of big-time footy, and major changes to the labour market and our local economies, in particular in the sugar industry in places like the Burdekin and Ingham and Innisfail and Proserpine. But to jam 3 games into 3 days for the men's, and likewise for the women's, I've got to say, quite frankly, is disgraceful. Now, the Queensland Rugby League, thanks largely to State of Origin, sucks in more money than ever before. And I've got to say, they should be doing more for the Foley Shield if they want to play the Foley Shield. Now, that's enough of my rant, but I know that I speak for many people, particularly our older audience and older rugby league supporters in North Queensland, who don't want to see the Foley Shield cheapen if we're going to keep it going. Anyway, as for the results from the Labor Day long weekend, last weekend on Saturday, Townsville versus Cairns in the men's. Townsville won 40 points to 16. In the women's, Townsville won 48-14. On Sunday, Mackay versus Cairns in the men's. Mackay won 58-6. In the women's, Cairns won 40-0. And on Monday, the Labor Day public holiday in Queensland, Mackay versus Townsville in the men's. Townsville won 40 points to 10, and the women's, Townsville won 50 points to 4. Townsville, therefore, collecting the silverware in both the men's and the women's for the second year running. So congratulations, Townsville. And worth remembering that of those 6 games, 5 of them were blowouts. In fact, in the closest game, the margin was 4 converted tries. Hardly a good advertisement for rugby league. Now in club footy, starting with Far North Queensland, the local competition resumes this Saturday with Yarrabah hosting Edmonton from 6 p.m. in round 6. At the same time, up on the Tablelands, the Atherton Roosters play the Glamour Boys, Cairns Brothers, whilst back on the coast at the Tully Showgrounds, not too far from the Golden Gumboot, the Tigers play Ivanhoes. Again, 6 p.m. is the kick-off time. And then on Sunday, 2 3:00 games, one on the Cassowary Coast at Callender Park, Billy Slater Oval, where the Innisfail Leprechauns do battle with Mareeba. The other game at Coronation Park, where the Mossman Port Douglas Sharks welcome Kangaroos. Roos, a very famous club in Cairns, who recently mourned the passing of club legend Alan Gill, as we reported in the news here on rugbyleague.com. To the FNQRL competition ladder, and Cairns Brothers and Suburbs both undefeated on 10 points. But I should point out that Brothers have had 2 byes in the opening 5 rounds. Go figure. 2 points off the pace on 8 points, the Atherton Roosters and Innisfail Leprechauns, and then Mareeba and Mossman on 5. They're followed by 3 teams on 4 points, Tully, Roos and Hose. Second last, the Edmonton Storm on 2 points, and right down the bottom, Yarrabah on 0 with 5 losses from 5 starts. On the other side of the Cardwell Range, in the Townsville competition, again because of the Foley Shield, no footy last weekend, and the table right now reads this way: Souths Brothers, Herbert River and Charters Towers in that order on 4 points. They're followed by Norths on 2, and then Centrals, Burdekin and Western Lions on 0. And the draw for this weekend, round 4, on Saturday at 4:30 p.m, Peggy Banfield Park is the venue for Norths v Burdekin. And then on Sunday, 3 matches scheduled to commence at 3 o'clock. Western Lions at Charters Towers. At the old home of Bindle Sharks, Souths take on old rivals Brothers. No love lost between those 2 clubs. And at the Sports Reserve, where I called the touring Great Britain team way back in 1992, we have the game between Centrals and the Crushers. In Mackay, my hometown, we have the competition also resuming this weekend with just the 7 teams playing in A-grade this year following the disappearance of Carltons, also known to some people as Norths. They made that decision before the opening round of the season in Mackay. Now, years ago, they would have booted the Red Devils altogether as a club, but no, in today's world, no appetite, it seems, for that sort of decision-making. And as for the schedule, and before we get to that, I want to say to the Red Devils, here's hoping that we see them back in A-grade sooner than later. But in terms of the schedule, 7:30 under lights on Saturday at Darryl Burke Oval. It's Moranbah hosting the Whitsunday Brahmins. And on Sunday, Souths, stacked with former NRL and Super League stars. They play Brothers at Shark Park at 3 o'clock. As Magpies, on the other side of the river, they square off against visiting Serena at Solid-Jinkin Oval. In Mount Isa, once a rugby league stronghold, particularly in those glory days of the Foley Shield, just the 2 teams this season. That's right, a 2-team competition. I've never heard of this ever, anywhere in the world. I can remember as a young reporter covering a competition with 4 teams, and that year you could actually finish last and still win the premiership. You could get the spoon and the trophy all in one. Well, in Mount Isa this year, just the 2 teams, namely Wanderers and Townies, and it's Wanderers v Townies this coming Sunday at 3 o'clock at Alex Inch Oval. No prizes for guessing who's going to make the grand final in Mount Isa this year. In Central Queensland, the Rocky competition includes the Gladstone clubs. No footy last weekend, and the ladder reads this way: Rocky Brothers on top on 5 points, then Yeppoon and Emu Park on 4, followed by Norths on 3. Next, Valleys and Tannum Sands on 2, and then Gladstone Brothers and Fitzroy's on 1 point. This Saturday, it's round 4. We have Norths v Valleys at the old Jimmy grounds on Rocky's north side from 3 o'clock. And then 3 games at 6:30. The Battle of the Gulls at Dennis Park. It's Tenham Sands versus Yeppoon. Back in town at Marley Brown Oval, it's Gladstone Brothers hosting Emu Park. And back up in Rocky, in the beef capital, at Salyards Park, the Sharks battle long-time local rivals Brothers. In the Central Highlands and Coalfields, where they mourned the recent passing of Paw Douglas. He made a huge contribution to local rugby league. And again, Vale Paw Douglas. No footy last weekend. This weekend, however, it fires up again. Round 5 starting on Friday night at Claremont. The Bears are at home to Emerald Brothers. Kick-off is 8 o'clock. And on Saturday night from 7 p.m, Peak Downs Pirates welcome the Middlemount Panthers. Worth noting that 2 other games have resulted in forfeits already. The Bluff Rabbitohs putting up the white flag in the lead-up to their game that had been scheduled for Springshaw. And Blackwater Crushers doing the same at home. Can you believe it? A home game against Tigers, and the Crushers says no. They say no, we're not playing. So quite staggering to see a team forfeiting a game on home soil. That is the case with the Blackwater Crushers this weekend. As for the ladder, Bluff on top on 8 points, the Tigers 7, Middlemount 6, Brothers 6, Springshaw 6, Blackwater 5, Claremont 2, Peak Downs 2. Further west, on the other side of the Drummond Range, Central West Rugby League last weekend at Winton, in the home of Walsing Matilda. The Diamantina Devils, they beat the Alpha Brumbies 28 points to 10, whilst in the Sunday game at Bar Calden, the Sandgoannas beat the Longreach Ilfracombe Tigers 26-14. The table, it reads this way: Barkey leading the way on 8 points. Then it's the Devils on 5, Tigers and defending champions Blackall on 4, and Alpha on 3. This weekend on Friday night at 6 o'clock, the Brumbies, they host the Magpies, and on Saturday, also at 6 o'clock, it's the Tigers and the Devils in Longreach. In the Northern Districts competition, involving a number of smaller communities between Bundaberg and Gladstone, nothing last weekend. The table reads this way: Isis Devils and Avondale Tigers on 6, Miriam Vale and South Callan on 4, Calliope and Gingin on 2, and the Marlins yet to get on the board. This weekend, all roads lead to South Callan, Shark Park as they call it. First up on Sunday, Devils v Marlins from 10:20 in the morning, then Tigers v Magpies from midday, and then the main game, Sharkies versus Roosters from 3 o'clock. To Bundaberg, no footy last weekend either. The table with Waves and Brothers on 5 points, Wallaroos on 4, Harvey Bay and Easts on 2, and Wests on 0. This Saturday, Waves hit the road for round 4 against Wallaroos. Kick-off is 4 o'clock. And back up in the rum capital, 2 games at Salter Oval. At 4:15, Magpies and Seagulls, followed by Panthers and Brothers at 6 o'clock. In the Central Burnett, Gayndah Gladiators, they celebrated last weekend after lifting the Citrus Cup. 34-20 winners over old rivals Mundubra. In the other match at Gayndah, Biggendon 46-22 over Monto. The table, Gayndah on 6, Biggendon 5, Mundubra 3, Monto 2, Eidsvold 2. This Saturday, the round 4 action is at Eidsvold, where we have the Gladiators versus the Warriors in the early game at 1 o'clock, followed by Eagles v Roos at 2:45. On the Sunshine Coast, Stanley River, Noosa and Coolum on 12 points, Maroochydore on 8, and then 4 teams on 4, the Bulldogs, Dolphins, Crushers and Sharks, and Caboolture on 0. This weekend on Saturday, 3 games from 5:30. The Snakes on the road against Maroochydore. The Crushers play the Colts at Nambour, and the Sharks welcome the Dogs. And then on Sunday at Woodford Showgrounds, the Wolves play the Pirates. In the Ipswich Rugby League, this Saturday, Redbank Plains versus West End from 6 o'clock. And on Sunday at 12:20 at the North Ipswich Reserve, the Jets versus the Fassifern Bombers. And at 4 p.m, Brothers at home to Norths. The ladder, Bombers and Brothers on 2, Redbank Plains and Norths on 1, and the Jets and West End with the donut after just the 1 round. To the Darling Downs, and in the Toowoomba Rugby League, some sad news this week for the Oakey Bears, with the passing of life member Di Cronk in the lead-up to Saturday's home game against visiting Highfields. And our deepest condolences to family and friends of the late Di Cronk. Now, last weekend, the Bears got done on home soil. Gatton just too strong for them, winning 32 points to 14. In the other round 4 results, Wattles 28-18 winners over Pittsworth at Platts Oval. Brothers 36-16 winners over Souths at Gold Park. In the Granite Belt, Dolby Diehards came away with a 34-28 victory over Warwick Cowboys. And on the board, Gundawindi 40 points to 16 winners over Valleys. To the table, we have 3 undefeated teams, Gatton, Wattles and Brothers all on 8 points, then Pittsworth on 4, followed by Gundawindi and Dalby on 3, and then Warwick, Oakey and Valleys on 2, and Highfields and Souths on 0. This Saturday, aside from the Bears hosting the winless Highfields, we have Wattles down at Gatton in what is arguably the game of the round. Both those matches to start at 6:30pm. And on Sunday from 2:30, Souths chasing their first win of the season against visiting Gundawindi as the Danes played Dalby at Pittsworth. And from 3 o'clock, Valleys at home to the Cowboys. In the Roma and District competition, round 3 this Sunday, Cities play St George at Arthur Beetson Oval, Chinchilla Bulldogs welcome Mitchell Magpies, Jandowie make the trip to Miles, and at Surat, the Red Bulls host Taroom Wandoan. All games start at 3 o'clock. And we can't really give you the ladder for now. Why? Well, because the league hasn't actually worked it out, and so hopefully that'll be fixed by next week. And finally to the Gold Coast, the Glitter Strip. This weekend it's round 4 action. Currumbin hosting Runaway Bay on Saturday, and then on Sunday at Betty Diamond, Costigan versus Burleigh, and Southport at home to Helensvale, all games from 3 o'clock. And the table, Burleigh and Costigan on 6, Runaway Bay on 4, Currumbin on 2, and Hornets and Tigers both on 0. Well, we got through that as well. You are listening to Bushbeat, and we shall take a break. I need it. And when we come back, we'll wrap it up here on rugbyleague.com. Welcome back to Bushbeat here on rugbyleague.com as we wrap up proceedings on what has been our very first show. Next week, we'll catch up with a former NRL star who's chasing a Cinderella finish with his hometown club. Hope you can join us for that. For now, a big thank you to my producer, Steve Mascord, for his outstanding work, as always. Also, thanks to the Harden Hawks for their warm welcome, especially Club President Jason Pollard. And we wish the Hawks all the very best for this weekend as the old boys return to McLean Oval. A big thank you to all those clubs who've started to make contact with us here at rugbyleague.com. If you haven't done so already, and you have something big coming up, a big game, an old boys reunion, whatever, and you'd like to tell the Rugby League world, by all means, drop us a line. Don't forget you can follow us on the various social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, X. And I must also thank you, the listener. We do this show for you, to keep you informed about country rugby league across the great southern land. And just before we sign off, to our Aussie mums, happy Mother's Day for this Sunday. I'm Jason Costigan saying bye-bye for now. Hope you can join us same time, same station next week for another episode of Bushbeat right here on rugbyleague.com.